Um,
Wow.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum
وعليكم السلام
assalam,
ورحمة
Shadi.
الله.
How are you, Fareed?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
Long time.
Very long time. Is this the same Shadi from like forever ago?
Yeah.
How you been, man? You doing all right?
Not too bad. How's the family?
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. I'm doing good.
That's good. So I was listening to
Been
you guys regarding Kitab
Yep.
Sulaim.
Mm-hmm.
So I did go into this for like a while. I took a few months. My studies were around it for like 2-3 months. I just focused on that. And I looked at what Sayyid al-Khou'i said. I looked at that big 3-volume book. I think his name is Al-Khuwaini or Al-Khwan. I don't know his name. I forgot his name, but
Eh, Al-Khu'ini.
Al-Khuwaini. And I looked through all the manuscripts and the chains. And I mean, it's interesting because we have to ask the question: what if we say it was fabricated? Was the intention to fabricate 13 imams or 12 imams? Right? If you say the intention was to fabricate 13 imams, I would say, okay, fine. You can use um, a narration, whatever, that says there's 13 imams, and you can say, well, look, this was his intention. It's proven from the book that you know, through the context that there was 13 imams being, trying to be pushed as an idea. However, when we look at earlier sources, for example, Kulaini has a chain to this book through Muhammad bin Abi Umair, I believe, and we clearly see 12 imams. And, so, I mean, it's kind of hard for you to say, well, the nuskha of Ibn al-Ghala'iri is the correct one, or even if it's not, like even if, there is a narration that it says the sons of Imam Ali, or the 12 imams, or the children of Imam Ali. I mean, there's many ways, that you can say, well, maybe it was from the writers, maybe it was from a mistake, someone was copying it. I think you have to look at what's the intent of the author and what's the contextual proof. Because, I mean, if you go to An-Nu'man, right, he also has a nuskha, and he quotes many narrations from from the one that he had, and he clearly shows that the 12 imams were being mentioned multiple times. I think he quotes like 7 narrations. And Nu'mani is closer to the book than Ibn al-Ghadari is. So is Kulaini. So I can see why al-Khu'i took the position that if there was a nuskha that was munharifa, like maybe, uh, you know, maybe this nuskha had that idea of 13 imams, but why should we take it when we have stronger evidence closer to the book? So if I looked at this objectively, without being Sunni or Shia, right? If I just took this objectively, I would say the intent of the author was to push 12 imams. And if there's any narrations that say 13 or it can be misunderstood as 13, this is obviously from either the manuscript was corrupted, there was a mistake in copying it, and I can show you examples actually where that happened, where uh, there will be a like, for example, Al-Kafi, you'll see 12 imams, or you can interpret it as 13. And if you go back to the source, you'll actually see in earlier source, you'll actually see, well, no, it was actually 12, not 13. I mean, it depends on how you read it, and also interpretation too is everything. You can see how maybe the meaning is general, maybe it's not. So I think a lot goes into it.
Yahya, first of all, I'd like to thank you for that. I appreciate the amount of thought that was put into that. It's much more refreshing than the usual response that we get when it comes to this specific topic. I wanted to get really deep into Kitab Sulaim initially, but there was like this one issue. I recall this occurring. I went through Riwayat Abd al-Razzaq and Kitab al-Nu'mani. And then I went through, like Riwayat Hamad bin Isa, right, in other classical works. And then I started going through the manuscripts. And the manuscripts that are like attributed to Abd al-Razzaq don't seem to fit that well with what you find in classical works. And the manuscripts that are attributed to Hamad bin Isa, don't seem to fit too well with like the classical reports that you find from Hamad bin Isa. That was like my initial stumbling block, and it really put me off. Um, looking into Kitab Sulaim further, I was like, this is just way too complicated. This does not make any sense. It doesn't fit in with what we have from the historical data. That's the first thing. But my main issue, or like a simpler issue, is this: when you open up Al Khuini Zinjani's book, I actually have it written down somewhere. Like on every single page, I came across the number 12 imams. It happened again and again. There's like 20 occurrences. It's all over the book. It's impossible to assume that, Ibn al-Ghadari overlooked all of that and found one example that can appear to be 13 due to some sort of a ta'wil. Clearly what must have happened was Ibn Ghadari had a nuskha that explicitly said 13 and didn't have like 20 examples that said 12, 12, 12, 12, 12, 12, 12. That seems to have been what happened. What are your thoughts?
So I don't necessarily agree with that because, if you have a book, right, that's all correct, but there's 3, 4, 5, 6 pages that's not correct, they may just reject the book. For example, Basar Darajat, most of it is correct according to our Aqidah. But there are a few things in there that the Ahl Qum didn't accept and they rejected the book. They didn't even narrate it from, not all of them, but for example, the teacher
Ibn
of Sheikh
Walid
Saduq,
Jama'a.
Ibn al-Walid, didn't narrate it. So, I mean, we do have examples of that. So, I mean, it comes down to this. Sheikh al-Mufid also said, right, what's in it is correct. He said that. What is inside the book is correct, but because of its it's the nature of it, because it's such an old asal, right? It's the first one. It's so old, and you have to be careful. Go to the scholars, make sure you have the correct manuscript, make sure you're going to the correct sources. And when we do that, we go to Kulaini, for example. He has a chain, and this chain really is just another name. It's just another form of a tariqah from him to the book, right? So I would say that Khomeini had a copy of it. At-Tusi had a copy of it. Saduq had a copy of it, and we don't find and they're all earlier than Ibn al-Ghadari, and even Sheikh al-Mufid. They're all earlier than both of them, and they will say, look, the Asl is telling us there will be 12 imams, right? So obviously the book, if you want to say it's fabricated, okay, fine. We can take that approach. We say, okay, it's fabricated. What was the intent of the author then? Or was there more than one author? Maybe one author had the idea of 13 imams he wanted to push. Maybe the first author had 12. Maybe and the second one wanted to add to it. It's very possible. But you have to go to the earlier sources. And I would take, okay, the hadith in Kulaini's book Al-Kafi over a manuscript that we have now. It's more because Kitab Al-Kafi is mutawatir to him. Okay, it's mashhur. I would take and that therefore his chain would be accepted because it's obviously coming from an established book. He has a chain from him all the way to the author, and the book clearly says there will be 12. There are 12 imams. Same thing with Ghaibat al-Nu'mani, his book, right? Ghaibat al-Nu'mani, it has that as well. And even the Ghaiba of Sheikh al-Tusi has that as well. The book of Kamal al-Din from Sheikh al-Saduq has that as well. The book of Kifayat al-Athar, or Athar, whatever, it has that as well. Okay? You go to the early source. I mean, Sahib al-Kifaya is actually later on, but that's fine. I think he was around, might have been like a generation after Sheikh al-Mufid or two. I'm not too sure. I haven't looked
I
into
think
that in
it's
a while.
I
But
think I think it's fourth century, late
yeah,
fourth century, I think.
yeah, yeah. So a little bit after him. But I mean, if you look at it objectively, okay. Me personally, I would say I would take the side of precaution. I would say, look, um, take from the books that mention this asal. Don't just take from the asal because it's more reliable to take from the books that mention it, because the books that mention it are mutawatir. The asl, you know, it may be mutawatir, it may not be mutawatir. Maybe the nusakh may be mashhura, it may not be. You know, there's a discussion here, but it seems to me that the best approach to researching Kitab Sulaim is by corroboration. Corroboration is extremely strong here. Okay, if we find a hadith in the Asl of Sulaim, we compare it to all the other books that quoted from it, and we'll see, does this hadith exist in other books? There you go. The main nuskha that was used has, oh, I believe, 49 narrations. I believe, or it might have been around there, 49, 48. This is the main, the what do you call it? The main manuscript that is used for Kitab Sulaim, and then the other ones are just additional. Like he used other manuscripts that weren't as strong, or weren't as famous, or weren't as established. So I would focus on those 49 narrations, and then try to find corroborating evidence for that, and you'll find that pretty much the entire book has more than one shawahid on it.
I'm going to toss something into the mix that's, of course, related to this. But I have a reason to be suspicious of some of these attributions. So you do regard the Kitab Sulaim to be the first asl, a very important work, explicit about 12 imams, right?
I would, yeah, go on.
Yeah. That being the case, why don't you have reports quoting Kitab Sulaim before Al-Kulayni? And of course, an affirming 12 imams. So you have Basair al-Darajat, which is a book that's completely focused on imama. I'm referring to al-Basair al-Sughra. It's got 700 reports. Not a single.
Basar only has 2-3 narrations about 12 imams. I've looked into myself. I tried to count them. So his focus wasn't on that. Rather, his focus was on the attributes of the imams, not the number of the imams. So Basar Darajat would be a good example.
Shadi, if you were there, at the time, you'd be quoting narrations that include the number of imams. So let's be sincere.
Yeah, but it depends on, okay, if you say Basar Darajat has a whole chapter, right, of just saying 12 imams, and he has 20, 30 narrations, and he doesn't mention a single one of those from Kitab Sulaim, I would say fine. But he only mentions about 2 or 3. Look for yourself. It's not like he was trying to be comprehensive.
I wouldn't
Right.
affirm,
So
I wouldn't affirm 2 or 3. Did you go through al-Sughra or al-Kubra?
I went through both. So the number of times that he mentions 12 imams is no more than a handful.
طيب.
No more than a handful.
So you're saying that you've come across a nuskha of Basair al-Sughra that explicitly mention the number 12 and explicitly mention the name or the word imam. Is that what you're saying?
No, for the Kubra Nuskha, the one that is printed, right?
Yep.
If you look at it, which is, by the way, bigger than a Sughra, and
Of
is
course.
actually an addition to a Sughra, right? So
Yeah.
if it was in the manuscript Basar Darajat and Al-Kubra, right, that's chances are, sorry, if it's in the Sughra, chances are it's going to be in Al-Kubra, unless there is something missing from the manuscript, right? Because Safar had a Sughra and Al-Kubra. A Sughra was an addition. Sorry, a Sughra was added onto by, it was made bigger, and that's why it's called Al-Kubra. So if a narration exists in a Sughra, then at the time it would have been in his bigger book, because it's just, Al-Kubra is just an addition. So if I look at in Al-Kubra, okay, I will find that there's only a handful of hadith that mentions 12 imams, and I wouldn't say it's a comprehensive book. Now, when you go to the actual topics, the books that were written on the topics of al-ghaiba, which does include the topics of how many imams are going to be, who is the 12th imam, what's the condition of the 12th imam, what are his signs, you will find that in every single case, Kitab Sulaim is mentioned. For example, I'll give you the strongest books on this: Al-Kifaya, Ikmal al-Din, the Ghaiba for Sheikh Atusi, the Ghaiba for Nu'man, and Kitab Al-Kafi has a whole chapter on the 12 Imams, and he mentions specifically, Kulaini mentions the most. Okay, this is how he does it. When Kulaini has a chapter, most of the time, he will include the usul, right? The book usul books, right? He will include uh, he'll try to include all of them or most of them. This is what his methodology was. He will try to go and find, okay, which asl, is found with this meaning, and I'm going to bring it in and put it in my chapter. So when we go to that, we find, yes, he mentions Kitab Sulaim. So those were the main five books that talked about the ghaiba. You can go to the father of Sheikh al-Saduq, right? He has a book that talks about the ghaiba, and he mentions the hadith as well, and it's confirmed by the chain in Ikmal al-Din that this hadith in his father's book was actually present in his book, because he actually quotes him. He actually quotes him in his book Ikmal al-Din. So if you want to say, well, he didn't narrate from his father, blah blah blah. I mean, we can. That's another discussion. I don't know what your view is on the connection between Sheikh Saduq and his father. That's another discussion. But nonetheless, if you look at our main books that talk about the ghaiba, you will find Kitab Sulaim being mentioned, and you will find the number of imams are 12. So,
Okay. Um, so, Akhi, first of all, in regards to those works that you mentioned, of course, Al-Kafi, Al-Ghayb Al-Tusi, Kitab Kifayat Al-Athar Al-Khazaz, they're all, Kulaini or post-Kulaini, which is my initial issue. In terms of pre-Kulaini works, the major early works of Hadith, the major ones, are Kitab Al-Mahasin, كتاب
Masadir
طرق
Kitab
الإسناد,
al-Mahasan, Kubur al-Isnan. Okay, then you have
نوادر نوادر.
Nawadir for Muhammad Ahmad Isa, which was a fiqh book, by the way. Okay.
Sure. But now, none of these works, before we even get into Basar, because the Basar discussion is just going to be a bit longer, you do agree that Al-Barqi's book and Qurb al-Isnad mention nothing about 12 Imams,
This is
right?
the problem here. Al-Mahasin, if you look at it, most of the narrations have to do with law. That's first. Number two, the majority of Al-Mahasin did not reach us. That's number two. Number three, Al-Mahasin does mention, rather, Al-Mahasin, if you look at it, it does talk about Aqidah, but it touches on it. It doesn't really go into it. It goes into, for example, it goes into food, water, brushing your hair. These things from the Sunnah. That's Al-Mahasin. So that's the compendium, right? Then we have what? We have the Nawadir of Ahmed bin Muhammad bin
لحظة
Isa
لحظة
al-Ash'ari,
خلنا
right?
خلنا على المحاسن بقى. Just one second أخي.
Oh,
Just one second. خلنا على
oh,
المحاسن. Because
okay.
المحاسن does include the report that's supposed to have 12 Imams. صح? There is that report in which
So you're talking about
Al-Khawwab,
the narration where the Khidr
yeah,
came and he asked him, and he
yeah,
mentioned the names of the Imams. And it wasn't in the manuscript
yeah.
of Al-Mahasin, correct?
It's supposed
Is
to
it
have 12 Imams,
right?
right? It's like Al-Barqi has no reason to
Okay.
exclude that report from his book. The
Which
second
book?
thing I want you to keep,
Yeah,
say what?
but he doesn't have it. Okay, and Mahasin, you realize this. Okay, first of all, is there a chapter that we have today from Al Mahasin that says the chapter of 12 Imams?
شادي بس بطلب منك خدمة سريعة برو. بس a
Hmm.
very quick خدمة. تعوذ من الشيطان يا أخي. تعوذ من الشيطان الرجيم. Just one second. Would you mind doing that?
Of course, brother. Go ahead.
أنا وأنت. أنا وأنت برو. أنا وأنت. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم.
Habibi.
الله يهدينا يا أخي.
I mean,
آمين. Al-Barqi quotes the report that's supposed to have 12 Imams. What is his motivation for not including it in his book? Al-Kulaini also attributes this report to Muhammad bin Hassan al-Saffar. And Muhammad bin Hassan al-Saffar also doesn't include this report in his book. I believe that this
okay.
report is something that either occurred, is either fabricated by Al-Kulaini or
Okay.
fabricated by Muhammad bin Yahya al-Attar. That's just my
So,
conclusion. Yeah, تفضل.
but you realize okay, so when this happens, okay, so you're referring to the hadith where Al Khidr came to Imam Ali, and Imam Ali told Hassan alayhi salam to answer the questions, the three questions, right? What
Yep.
happens to the soul when the person sleeps? Okay, And then there were other two questions, and then after he answered that, Al Khidr said, "I believe in these imams." He mentioned them by name. Okay. Now you're taking this manuscript, which is stronger, more mutawatir, it's much clearer than Al Mahasin, and you're saying that we should take Al Mahasin, which has a weaker manuscript pool, and use that as the standard to say, okay, Kulaini should have fabricated Farid. That is not a proper way to look at the situation here. I would take, as an objective researcher, forget me being Sunni wa Shi'i, forget about it. Wallah al-Azim, I'm looking at it from an objective standpoint. If I have two books and I want to make a comparison, I'm going to take the book which has stronger manuscript evidence, has a stronger pool, is more famous and more relied on. Okay, to do the comparison and make the standard, right? I'm not going to use the weaker manuscript to make the standard. I'm going to use a stronger one. That's number one. Number two, you're saying that Kulaini fabricated narrations. This is the problem here. On what basis are you saying that Kulaini is now a fabricator? He's making up narrations. If you look in the hadith, As-Saffar actually
It's
talks about the
50-50.
narration. Right.
Okay,
He
go
says
ahead.
that
Go.
Safar, are you saying that Kulaini also fabricated the statement of Safar when he said we narrated from Al-Barqi
I, I
10 years before the Hira?
I said it's
Hira,
50. I think
right?
it's 50-50. It's either al-Kulaini or Muhammad bin Hilatar, because that's where the information is coming from. Safar is saying, I heard this before the Ghaiba by 10 years. That's like exclusively narrated by Muhammad bin Yahya. The fact that this extremely important report, and Shadi, you have to agree with me, it's a very important report. It includes the names of all 12 Imams. It's very explicit. Al-Isnad seems clean as well. And akhi, every single time I have a discussion with a Shia, not well, not every single time, but many, many times when I have discussions with Shias, this is the first report that they quote because it's in this very important book. It seems clean. It lists all the imams. It's a wonderful report. And hatta akhi, yani, it's such a good report that Muhammad bin Yahya is telling the Safar, I wish it came from someone, I wish it came from someone else.
Right,
I wish it came from
right.
someone else. But yeah, this shows how important this report is, and yet, يعني, it's in Mahasin al-Barqi,
But
but
there's a problem.
the most important part in which all 12 imams are supposed to be named are not named. Now you mentioned that there may be a mistake, there may have occurred some sort of issue in the manuscript itself. But akhi, this is not a sahu. This is not a normal sahu. Like, bro, imagine, I'd understand tahrif. Yeah, I'd understand tahrif. Is that the argument you're making? Are you arguing that the person that copied Iktab al-Mahasin intentionally
No,
got rid of that information?
no.
Or are you saying that it's a mistake?
So I wouldn't say it was intentionally, right? I don't think that somebody
Yeah,
intentionally did. But if you look at the chain and Hassan, first of all, it's not even the same
yeah.
chain. It's through his father from Jafar al-Sadiq, by the way.
Yes,
So it's not even the
yes.
same chain. So if you want to say it's the same hadith, you have to show me, okay, is it the same chain? First of all, it's not. It's a different chain. And part of a hadith is its chain. It's the most important, one of the most important parts of the narration. So number one, it's not even the same narration. It's not. And
I'll
number
respond.
two,
I'll respond quickly to
uh,
that. I'll
that's
respond
fine.
quickly to that.
It's fine. So you have Jawad narrating from Sadiq, right? All right, fine. Just going from Jawad. However, Al Barqi is taking it from his father, from Al Jawad. Sorry, from
Yeah.
Al Askari, through I believe it was like either through Al Jawad or Al Askari. I'm not too sure which Imam it was from. I think it's from Al Askari, right? Or Jawad. I'm not too sure.
Um, Abu Hashim al-Ja'fari is quoting from al-Jawad in al-Kafi, and in
Right.
al-Mahasin, Abu Hashim al-Ja'fari يرفع الحديث إلى الإمام الصادق.
Okay, so it's
Right?
marfu.
So,
It's not even the same level of authenticity too. So it's marfu.
بس شادي أخي. So are we saying that this is a mistake, or are we? So that's the argument. The argument is it's a mistake, right?
Okay, what I'm saying.
And then I'll share my perspective.
Okay, when
Yeah,
you say mistake, this is what we have to understand.
yeah.
When you have manuscripts, okay, you have two manuscripts. You have one which is weaker. Do you agree that Mahasan has a weaker manuscript pool?
Yes,
Okay. Do you agree that Al-Kulaini has a stronger, Al-Kafi has a stronger manuscript pool?
of course.
Okay, so which one would you take as a standard in
Um,
comparison?
I'm, t- I'm telling you why. I'm telling you why I regard al-Mahasin to be legit is because I can't see how a mistake like that would occur. I can see the attempts of taslih because from an outsider's perspective, and by the way, يا أخي, يعني في كلا الحالتين, this is not binding upon me. I'm trying to be as objective as possible. And it seems to me that the Barqi chain was fixed because it's clearly a disconnected report. Abu Hashim al-Ja'fari never heard anything from al-Sadiq, and of course, it even mentions, if I recall correctly, al-Hadith marfu', suggesting a disconnection. So in
Okay.
al-Kafi, the report is fixed and the Imam is changed from Ja'far al-Sadiq to al-Jawad. That's how the report is
But this is
fixed.
the this is the
Again, the
problem
main
here,
point,
Farid.
the main point here
If I can,
Akhi, let me finish.
go
Akhi.
ahead, go ahead.
The main point, the main point here is that I can't see how a mistake would cause someone to drop the main fa'id in the hadith. The main fa'id in the hadith is not the answer to the questions of al-Khidr. The main fa'id in the hadith is a nas, the appointment of all 12 imams. Akhi, well, very quickly, al-Kulaini is arguing, is suggesting that al-Barqi and the Safar both have narrated this. Al-Barqi's book, subhanallah, doesn't have it, or has the report, but doesn't have the most important bit, which lists all 12 of the Imams.
Okay.
وثانيا, Safar never includes the hadith, never quotes the hadith. Akhi, imagine you were a Safar, and you were there at the time of Al-Hasan Askari. You were there in the year 250. You had 40 years to include this report, and you never did. Why wouldn't you include this extremely important report in your book? And by the
Because
way, this fits in. This fits in with historical Shi'ism because, as you're aware, there's ikhtilafat bin Shia when it comes to who the next Imam is. So it actually makes sense that we don't have a list of all 12 Imams since the time of an early Imam, since the time of Al-Hasan speaking to Al-Khidr, right?
okay. So first of
تفضل.
all, okay. So first of all, when you look at the manuscript of Al-Muhassin, okay, you are making the judgment based on the manuscript being from the author Al-Barqi in its original form. Okay, that's the assumption that you're making. Okay,
Yes.
and based on that assumption, you are making your istidlal, you are making your argument, you're making your deductions. My contention is this, yeah, Farid. The manuscript for Al-Kafi is stronger, more widespread than Al-Mahasin. So any type of deduction or logical, rational thinking which you are using to derive concepts from the manuscripts, they first have to be weighed in their value. Okay? You can't go to a manuscript that's weaker and then argue from that weaker manuscript your point when the stronger manuscript contradicts it and, in a way clarifies for you. Okay? Number two, when you look at the hadith and al-mahasin, it's not the same narration. The chain is clearly different. It's not the same. Number three, the hadith is also found in other books with the 12 imams mentioned. For example, in Tafsir al-Qummi, it mentions the hadith and it mentions the names of the imams in this tafsir. On another point, okay?
Would you mind reminding, Akhi, please remind me where in Tafsir al-Qummi?
It's in there. I read it actually not too long ago, and I was surprised it was in
Um,
there too. I could bring it out for
I,
you. Give me 5 minutes, and
please.
I'll show you.
أنا معك, bro. أنا معك. If anyone in the comments recalls where it can be found in Tafsir al-Qummi, because I recall there being an issue there, bro. I recall there being an issue.
Okay. Even if it's not,
So
which it is,
if
by the
anyone's
way.
familiar with this one, Tafsir al-Qummi, the hadith of Abu Hashim al-Ja'fari, please do let us know. Say what?
Okay. So that's three. Number four. You mentioned that Safar didn't narrate this hadith. Okay.
Yes.
When was the book of Basa'ir Darajat written? Do you know?
No. I do
Okay.
not know. I don't have a
So
specific date,
it was
but
he was the companion of the 11th Imam.
okay.
Okay. So when he wrote his book, he could have written it during the time of the 10th Imam or the 11th Imam, right? So it's not as if, okay, and the Imam who narrated this hadith is from the ninth Imam, Al-Jawad alayhi salam. So it's not as if he's going to have every single narration with him at the time. I mean, this is just assumptions. We're making assumptions now. You're saying, well, if As-Safar was going to use hadith, okay, he would have used this one, but that's not certain. You're making an assumption. Maybe he thought the other narrations that he included were stronger. Maybe he had stronger chains to them. Maybe he had the books with him at the time. Maybe he thought he was a little shaky on al-Barqi because the people at the
Bro,
time accused al-Barqi, by the way, and they retracted their accusation, right? So al-Barqi is kind of shaky to some people. Maybe his opinion was that. Maybe, okay, I'm going to use stronger narrations. Akhi, there is many things you can say why he didn't include it in his narrations. To simply say, okay, he didn't
okay,
include
but
it in
doesn't he
his narrations. It
authenticate the
must have
hadith?
been. He doesn't authenticate the hadith. What do you mean? How does not including a hadith in a
I
book?
said he does authenticate the
Right.
hadith in
Just
al-Kafi.
because, okay, but just because he
No,
authenticates
no.
it, it doesn't mean that he doesn't believe there are other stronger narrations, brother. Okay. Just because,
It's got, akhi, it's got nothing to do with strength here. Here's the thing.
but it does, brother.
There's
It
nothing
does.
that is it a book of Sahih? It's not a book of Sahih.
No, it's not. But when he narrates his hadith, it's the path of the intellectuals to take what is stronger and leave what is weaker, right?
What's
So if
stronger that
he,
he rejects?
what I'm
What's
saying
akhi,
is,
yeah.
Farid, you're making assumptions, but I'm also making my own assumptions too, right? Like, so
إيه،
so you're
تفضل
answering,
تفضل
you're asking me proof for my assumptions, brother.
تفضل.
You're also making assumptions. So on the same level of being sumptuous. We're arguing from assumptions now. We're using induction. We're not using any deduction here. This is an inductive approach. You're saying, well, we should find a pattern here, right? The pattern should follow this because we know the attributes of Safar. We understand that the Shia at the time were looking for 12 Imams. It was a big deal. And I'm telling you, on that same level of argumentation, I can also give you reasons why. Perhaps this, perhaps that, because you are also saying perhaps this, perhaps that. So on the same level field, we are arguing. And I'm saying to you, just because As-Safar didn't include that hadith in his book, it didn't mean that, it was fabricated or, whatever. He simply had, maybe had another reason. Same thing with Al-Kafi. There are narrations in there that don't include many strong, hadith of the 12 Imams. Shaykh al-Saduq, he has the same thing for him. Just because they don't include it, it doesn't mean it's weak or they didn't find stronger hadith for it. So that's an assumption, Farid.
Um, okay, so if you just give me a minute, I'm about to find the quote from Tafsir al-Qummi because I recall this one being problems. Give me a sec, please.
And by the way, the brothers are asking me to ask you if you want to discuss hadith and stuff more in depthly. Brother Saif Ali Al Jazairi, I think would be more appropriate because he does have more knowledge than me when it comes to narrations and stuff like that in the Sunni realm. So we're wondering if you have time, if it permits, your life, whatever, if you could enter into a discussion with Saif Ali Al Jazairi, because I believe that we would all benefit from this discussion. And I know that Saif Ali, when I was attending his debates, he's very respectful. And I'm sure we can create equal time. If that's something you're interested in, we would very much like to see that.
Akhi, if you're referring to a discussion where he just jumps on the panel, I have no issues. But if you're referring to a scheduled debate, I only have debates with people that I know, like yani, someone with a name. I've heard of him on this app, but I have no idea who he is.
He's quite popular, actually. It's not like, I mean, and also, I don't think
I've
you
had
should
I've
make
had
take
this.
debates on that. I think you
The
should
reason
judge
I'm
based
saying
on
this,
knowledge, not on
لا لا
how popular
the
you are.
reason. the reason why I'm having this, the reason why I'm saying this is because I've had a debate with someone before, and after the debate, the guy was thrown down the bus, and people were like, "Yeah, he doesn't represent us."
I'm
So
sorry.
yeah, I've had discussions with people in the past who, after the debate ended, they're like, "Yeah, he doesn't represent us,"
I find that
suggesting, yeah,
if you take on my position, okay, we've been debating for years, for on and off. Okay, you know me, and you have been at it debating respectfully, and other brothers as well from Bayat al Ghadir and all of these things. Uh, I can tell you that from our position and from the majority of the Shias here, they say that he does represent our views when it comes to the positions on Sunni al-Rijal. May not be 100%, but I feel like many of us do want to see you have a discussion with him. It's not to make you, it's not to challenge you. It's not to make you feel like, we're trying to surround you. We would just like to see, because why? Well, because why? I'll tell you why,
no,
Farid.
not at all, man,
Because
not at
I'll
all,
tell you why.
not at all.
Because you have knowledge in Sunni al-Rijal and Hadith. He has knowledge in Sunni al-Rijal and Hadith. So, and I feel like you guys would match each other's caliber when it comes to this. And also, you're debating Ibn Baz's students, right, on certain issues. And I mean, when it comes to popularity, I think, I don't think you should use that as a metric. What I think you should use it as a metric is how knowledgeable the person is, and then debate them. That's what I think you should do. But that's
You
up to you.
lost me. Ibn Buzz's student, or I'm not sure what you're talking about.
Um, I have the link here, but I'll DM you what I'm talking about. That's fine. I don't know exactly who, but I mean,
Like you
it's fine.
lost me completely.
Anyway, so um, Al
Okay, so
Sheikh
so by the way, I just looked into it right now. The hadith that you're referring to. One sec. The hadith you're referring to in Tafsir al-Qummi doesn't list the names of the imams, akhi. It's the same thing. It's Surah al-Zumar, and that Ali ibn Ibrahim al-Qummi is quoting his father. He's quoting Abu Hashim. It says, عن داود بن القاسم الجعفري. It's supposed to be Abu Hashim Dawud bin al-Qasim al-Ja'fari. عن أبي جعفر محمد بن علي بن موسى عليه السلام. And then it provides the report with Al-Hasan bin Ali and Amir al-Mu'mineen وهو متكئ على يد سلمان. And then it goes on with the full report, and there's nothing there about the 12 Imams. So these are two sources in which
okay.
the same report exists, and yet, um, I mean, it seems to. I mean, Kitab Ali ibn Ibrahim would technically, would predate al-Kafi,
So
and yet there's no mentioning of
okay,
12 Imams.
okay. So
Please do
you're
check it
admitting
yourself.
that. So yeah. So I do believe there's manuscripts that do mention the 12 imams and their names. I don't know which one you're looking at, but I remember distinctly looking at it and seeing that the 12 imams were mentioned. So I'm gonna look at what is online, which books, and I'll
Well,
get back to you on that. That's fine.
just to
But even if that's not the case, Farid, again, you have a stronger
so
manuscript
so
from
أخي,
Al Kafi.
لحظة, just for the sake of clarification. لحظة, bro, just one second. One sec, أخي. Just for the sake of clarity, you're saying that you've read manuscripts of Tafsir al-Qummi that include this report and include 12 Imams being mentioned in this report. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe so. But even if that's not the case, that I made a
Okay.
mistake, right? That's
Yeah.
completely irrelevant, honestly. When it comes to the
So,
comparison between Kulaini's books and Nu'mani's books, his book, Sheikh Hatusi's book, all of them mentioning sorry, all of them mentioning Kitab Sulaim, and then also Kulaini's manuscript, which mentions the specific Afif al-Khudr, talking to Imam Ali. The manuscript and Al-Kaf of Al-Kafi is our strongest book when it comes to manuscript, right? Manuscript
yeah,
evidence.
yeah,
So
I agree.
even if, okay, yeah. So, I mean, you have to use that as the standard. You can't use weaker manuscripts to just say, okay,
أخي, it's two
there's an issue
different
here.
books, man. It's two different books that don't have the ending of the
But
hadith that
both
lists 12
have different
Imams.
chains, though. Brother Farid, the chain in Al Kafi is different. The chain in Al Mahasin is different. The chain in Tafsir Al Qummi is different. The
No, it's the
Imam in
same.
Al Kafi,
It's the same.
the chains are different.
لا لا شوف the isnad in تفسير علي بن إبراهيم القمي. لحظة let me get it for you one sec.
Let me pull
let
it
me
up. Give me 1 second. Let me pull it up.
By the way, it doesn't say عن جعفر الصادق. It's عن الجواد, yeah. Okay. So the chain is حدثني أبي. Oh, so it's directly it's Ibrahim bin Hashim al-Qummi narrating from Abu Hashim Dawood bin Qasim al-Ja'fari. It doesn't even have al-Barqi, unless you're going to say that
Exactly.
al-Barqi.
It's a different. Yeah, exactly. It's a different. It's a different chain.
Oh, so
That's what I'm
you're
trying to say.
saying, are you saying that Dawood bin Qasim al-Ja'fari? أخي, are you saying that Dawood bin Qasim al-Ja'fari narrated this report twice, and in one of the times, just did not mention the 12 Imams? He didn't mention 12 Imams to Ibrahim bin Hashim, but he mentioned 12 Imams to al-Barqi. Is that what you're saying?
What I'm saying is this: both manuscripts of Ali bin Ibrahim al-Qummi's manuscript and the manuscript of al-Mahasin are not at the same level of al-Kafi. That's number one. Number two, okay, the chains in all three hadith, they are different, as you just said. The first one has al-Barqi to who? To the, I think it's Abu Hashim, right? I forgot exactly who's in the chain. Okay, so from the companion
Um,
of Al Jawad to Jawad alayhi salam. Okay, the second chain is what? The second chain is from Al Barqi to his father, etc., to Jafar as-Sadiq, right? That's a different chain. It's marfu' in the second one. The third one as well is a different chain. They're not the same hadith. This I'm saying for argument's sake, ya Farid. If the manuscripts were at the same level, okay, argument's sake, okay, they're not the same chain, they're not the same hadith. If I was debating you, ya Farid, and I came to you and I said, look, Farid, Bukhari is clearly changing the hadith here, and you come and I come to you and Bukhari's chain is different from what's in Muslim, what would you tell me? You would tell me, ya akhi, the pathway of Bukhari is different from Muslim, therefore the matan will be different. That's I would say fine. That's a valid point. Why aren't you not using the same standard here?
yeah, I am, أخي. I am saying that one of the narrators added something or removed something.
But Farid,
I am actually doing that. That's exactly what I'm doing. I'm saying that Al-Barqi narrated this in this specific way. All right, it's not أخي. Al-Barqi is supposed to be a 12er. Muhammad bin Hassan Safar is supposed to be a 12er. Neither of those. So Safar doesn't include this hadith in his book, despite living for 40 more years. Okay, that's very strange. Al-Barqi includes the hadith in his book, but doesn't mention 12 Imams. Ali bin
but he doesn't
Ibrahim
include it.
al-Qummi,
He
just one
doesn't.
second.
But he doesn't.
Just let me finish. Let me finish, please. Ali bin Ibrahim al-Qummi quotes this report from his father, from Abu Hashim Dawood bin Qasim al-Ja'fari as well, and he also doesn't include 12 Imams. Now, I do understand what you're saying with the manuscripts, and I do agree, Akhi. I do agree with you completely. Al-Kafi is the strongest in terms of manuscript. However, it's too many coincidences, man. You can't say that this was a mistake from Al-Barqi and a mistake from Ali bin Ibrahim al-Qummi. And subhanallah, Muhammad bin Hassan Safar,
No, no, no. I
just
didn't say
didn't
that,
want to.
brother.
Ah,
I did not say that. First of all, with all due respect, I never said that. What I said was the manuscripts are not on the same level. That's what I said. So when
okay.
you say Al Barki made a mistake, Al Safar made a mistake, first of all, I didn't say any of that. What I'm saying is the manuscript evidence, which you are using to make your arguments from, are not on the same level of Al Kafi. Okay, that's number
Hmm.
one. Number two, the
Okay.
chains in these hadith. You keep saying the same hadith. According to our understanding of narrations, okay, a hadith includes the sanad, and if the sanad is different, it's not the same hadith, it's a different narration. It's a different
أخي
narration altogether. One hadith is marfu', one hadith is
أخي
from
مشايخكم, when
directly.
they quote this hadith, they will.
I think we're lagging, that's why I feel like I'm talking over you.
It seems to be. أخي, what I'm trying to say is, it's clearly the same hadith. والدليل على ذلك, the proof of this is that when your ulama quote this hadith in al-Kafi, they will say things like أخرجه البرقي في كتاب المحاسن وأخرجه الصادوق الدين, for example, وأخرجه الطوسي في الغيب. They will mention these other sources. وأخرجه علي بن إبراهيم القمي. They see it as the same hadith. Now, of course, you are pointing out some minor differences here and there in this, not and whatnot. But أعوذ بالله من الشيطان
تخريج
الرجيم. يا أخي,
المعنى
give me a
though.
sec,
It's
man.
not تخريج
Folks in the
السند.
comments, يا أخي.
It's not the same chain. It would be
that,
the narrations which talk
it,
about.
it, but they're recognizing it.
Okay,
They're
but you're saying
recognizing it
that
as the same thing, bro.
just Habibi, just because they say akhrajahu, it does not mean that they're not using different hadith. Okay, many. If I say, for example, Al-Kafi also narrates this in his book, it doesn't mean that the chain is the same. Okay, it doesn't mean that. What it means
Of
is
course, we agree. We agree.
the matan, the matan either has a similar meaning, okay, to the point where you can call it the same matan, or it's the same hadith, right? In all three cases, we can find that it's not the same chain. It's just not. Uh, you agree to that. So I don't think you can say that, okay, there's fabrication. You can't say that because, again, the manuscripts are not as strong as Al-Kafi, number one. Number two, the chains are completely different. And number three, you're making the argument based on an assumption that if if this hadith existed, it would have been in Basair. I don't see how you are making that argument simply based on the fact that he quotes three, four, a handful of narrations mentioning the 12. It doesn't include this. So therefore, it must have been fabricated. I don't see. I don't see how you're making this argument. But I mean, there are people who have the opinion, by the way, that this hadith is in Al Basair. It is in some manuscripts. It does mention this narration too. So that's another topic. If you want to talk about that, we can also go and look at that. But I do have manuscripts here that I pulled up that does mention this hadith. 1 second. Give me 1 second. So I'm gonna send you the manuscript, Farid. But my phone's about to die. So I'm gonna plug my phone
أخي,
in.
very briefly,
Give
I
me
just
one.
want to mention this in regards to the argument that there's a mistake in the manuscript in Kitab al-Mahasin. The reason why it doesn't make sense is that the difference is very natural, okay? Because it says واشهد أنك وصية واشهد أن الحسين وصيك حتى أتى على آخرهم, okay? واشهد أن الحسين وصيك حتى أتى على آخرهم. This is not a mistake, أخي. Like a mistake would be, the chain cut off. This is not a mistake. If al-Barqi had this report, you're saying that this is a different hadith, which means that al-Barqi had two different reports. Why wouldn't al-Barqi quote the Kafi report, the report that mentions all 12 imams? And the reason is because al-Barqi never had that report. And actually, I
Again.
just want to wrap things up in regards to this specific argument.
Okay.
In regards to Basair al-Darajat, I do have to reiterate, في البصائر الصغرى, there's nothing explicit about 12 imams. The best that you have is about 12 muhaddathun, while of course the muhaddath isn't necessarily an imam. Of course, we can get to that later, inshallah. But there are reports that
Al-Muhaddith
say
would
that
be. Right, so Muhaddith would be.
Salman is not an imam.
Right. When they say
Salman is
12
not an imam.
Muhaddath, doesn't
Yeah.
matter though, because you're contextualizing these word Muhaddathun would be the 12 Imams. So
طيب, but there are reports that say
is there
Salman
another 12
al-Haddath.
Muhaddathun? It doesn't seem. But anyway, brother, you're saying that As-Sughra doesn't include it. Seems
Yeah.
weird that you're using a smaller book to be the standard over a bigger book. I mean,
Yes, I'll tell you why.
the
I'll
final
tell you why. I'll tell
complete,
you why.
the
I'll tell you
final
why.
complete one. If I can just finish for you, the final book, the final complete book of Basair al-Darajat
It's not by him.
is
It's not by
Sughra.
him. It's not by him.
That's a
and
okay.
I
That's
would.
a claim, but that's a claim, though, right? So you're saying Al Kubra is not from As-Saffar.
Yeah, it's by the way, this is not me sharing my ijtihad. يعني هذا كلام الشيخ العريبي.
Okay,
And he
okay,
has
but I can bring your what the problem is here, Farid, the majority
لحظة
understanding, the
bro
vast
بس
majority
لحظة
understanding of
لحظة
this
لحظة
Nuskha Al Kubra. You're taking like Shadi opinions and trying to say like, okay, this is one opinion. It doesn't work that way. You have to
لحظة
go
لا
with
لا
what.
لا لا let me finish man let me finish I'll tell you why he says this يعني العريبي he has this really fascinating رسالة دراسة called نظرات في نسخ بصائر الدرجات glimpses into the manuscripts of بصائر الدرجات, and what he does is he shows that the classical or the mukhtasar, or not the mukhtasar, excuse me, الصغرى is what was relied upon by classical Shi'i scholars. As for al-kubra, it wasn't relied upon by classical Shi'i scholars. And then he has, of course, his conclusions. And by the way, Al-Arabi, there's no one in the world that has studied this specific topic more than Al-Arabi. There are no like lengthy buhuth in regards to Basar al-Darajat. He is the main person who has studied this book. And he came to this conclusion. It's not Yani Farid, using his ijtihad, he's quoting a random Shadh scholar. There's no one that's done this research.
I would disagree with that. I mean,
Oh.
there's many
Who
books
has?
on the book. For example, there's like 6, 7 additions to this book. If you look at the Hamish under on the bottom of it, they will have a full bahth for for like for example, they'll mention the manuscripts. They will mention literally the name of the manuscript, right? And they will tell you if wasn't found in the main manuscript or not. Okay,
Who's
let's
done a
talk about the
comparison?
one second. Let's talk about the chain of the manuscript first of all. Okay, look, the the main manuscript, which is meme, right? Manuscript meme. This is the main one that's used. Okay, and this manuscript was dated about 100 years after Sheikh al-Tusi. Okay, and the actual manuscript is real. It's there. I think it's actually not too far from where I live. It's in University of Michigan. Okay, I believe it's there, or it might have been sent back to Iran. I'm not too sure. If you look at this manuscript, okay, which is only 100 years after Sheikh al-Tusi, okay, and the book was widespread, you would agree that the book was widespread during the time of Sheikh al-Tusi. 100 years later, I mean, it's not that long ago after him, because you have maybe 2 generations between him, and let's say maybe 3 generations between this manuscript and Sheikh al-Tusi. It would be very hard for you to prove that this manuscript is not reliable, especially when you have so much corroborating to show this manuscript meme. And if you look at this manuscript, I mean, you
Why
will
does
find.
Al-Arabi, why does Al-Arabi say that classical Shi'i scholars relied on the Sughra and didn't rely on the Kubra?
So I have a question for you. You're talking about the PDF with 50 pages already, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Another
Have you
two.
have you
Okay,
went through this?
I read that. I read that book as well. By the way,
طيب.
I like to tell you something. It's not comprehensive. Sorry, I went through that PDF, and I'll tell you this: it is there is no possible way you could say that a book with 50 pages. By the way, some of the pages are not even full pages; they're literally just a picture. You cannot say that's a comprehensive study on Basar and
أوسع
Darajat.
دراسة. What's more comprehensive?
Habibi, you have literally 6, 7 editions of Basar Darajat that talk way more about the manuscripts. I'll go on alfikr.net right now and show
لا لا
you.
لا 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 أخي, I mean a comparison between الصغرى والكبرى ونسبة الكتاب إلى الصفار. Is there anyone that's done this much work as much as a Safar? And if you say yes and you provide the name, I'll happily look into it.
Okay, fine. We can go into that. I believe that's a side discussion, okay, regarding as-Saghra
طيب.
wal-Kubra. But
So
intellectually,
by the way,
but
the
by the
reason
way,
why I'm saying
listen,
this,
Farid, this is what I'm
this,
saying. Look,
this,
one second.
this,
Just one
this the
second,
reason
Farid.
I just want to mention why I'm saying
Intellectually,
this.
Habibi. Farid, one second, Habibi. Intellectually, yeah, Farid. Intellectually.
Yeah.
If I am going to judge a author's possession of hadith material, would I take his earlier work or his later, more complete work?
Oh, naturally, his later, more complete work, but that's the
Okay,
difference between
so
us.
you're trying
I'm
to
saying
now say
uh,
that the later
there's no.
complete work is
I'm
not
saying
from.
the classical scholars, ما اعتمدوا هذا الكتاب. They relied on the Surah. They didn't rely on the Kubra, bro.
Oh, okay, so if you actually look at Al-Uraydi, what he says in his book, he does not say that the Al-Kubra is weaker, or sorry, Al-Kubra is weak or it cannot be relied on. He says that you have to compare, you have to contrast, and look, he does not say you can't rely on that book. By the way, that was his conclusion. He doesn't reject the book. We can go and look.
لا لا, he
we
doesn't
can show.
reject the book. لا 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 لا.
Right, right.
He doesn't
So
he doesn't reject. لحظة لحظة. He doesn't say that the book is like a fabrication or anything like that. أنا أوافقك. But he's talking about نسبة الكتاب إلى الصفار, the attribution of the book to a Safar himself.
and he does not reject that.
Major difference.
Yeah, can you show me where he
Okay.
rejects the nisba to
Sure,
Safar?
sure, 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 sure. Just give me a minute. Yeah,
Okay,
give me a minute.
okay, that's fine. While you're doing that, let's continue the discussion another time, inshallah. I have to get going somewhere, but if you want, I'll stay for what you have to say before I go. But I do have to wrap it up.
Okay, so check it out. Go to page number 37, or excuse me, page number 36 of the PDF. Excuse me, 37 of the PDF, or 36, where he says, والحاصل. Can you see that?
Yeah, go ahead and read it to me. It's fine. My
أيوه.
phone's about to die.
أوكي.
Go ahead.
وتسميته بالبصائر مع خلو الكتاب من مقدمة أو خطبة لمصنفه يورث الاحتمال كونه مما تبرع بها النساخ جريا على إلصاق الكتاب بأقرب شبيهاته من المصنفات أو مما أدرجه النساخ من تتمات بعض المشايخ المتقدمين.
Okay. For which hadith?
Yeah. He's referring to الكبرى. He's
Okay.
saying this is
He's
الكبرى.
no,
This is
he's
this is the issue
mentioning
with الكبرى.
no, Habibi. He's mentioning specific narrations that were not
لا لا
found.
لا
Yeah. He's not saying
لا لا.
he's not saying the entirety of Al-Kubra was added to the Sughra
Oh, the
by other
additions,
late
of
scholars.
course, of
He's
course, the
saying
additions
there
that
you
are
can
not found in
find some
الصغرى.
example. He's saying Habibi. He's saying you can find some examples, okay, that don't agree with the other manuscripts for Al-Kubra, and he's saying
Yep.
perhaps this was added by the other scholars, right? Who thought, okay, I'm gonna just the same way. For example, Tafsir al-Qummi, the later scholars added to his book, right? And that fashion, or even actually, you could go further and say, you know, that they saw there was some hadith that Safar didn't mention. They're from his line, from his teachers, and they simply added it. But anyways, my phone's about to die, and inshallah, we can let me know. Like I really like this
It was a
discussion, and
pleasure,
it
bro.
was
It
a
was a
pleasure.
pleasure.
Let
I
me
enjoyed
know,
this, man.
inshallah, brother. Yeah, yallah, guys.
All right. You take
Enjoy
care
your
of
day.
yourself, man.
You too.
Have a good one. Have a
You
good
too,
one.
man.
MashaAllah. شوف, yeah, folks. And this is how discussions are supposed to be conducted. I hope you guys enjoyed that one.